There's a problem with the Gran Turismo movie that I'm actually surprised no one is talking about, and I think the fact that it's based on a true story is the best and also worst thing about it. But in order for me to explain why, I'm gonna need to give you some context. This video will contain spoilers. Before the movie released, the review embargo got lifted and the critic reviews on Rotten Tomato were at 54%. It has come up since that time, it's now sitting at 65%, but you can see the considerable difference between the critic score and the audience score. Now, I know I've talked before about how Rotten Tomatoes is not a reliable site to figure out if a movie is worth watching or not. I mean, I made a whole video about why you shouldn't trust reviews. Shameless plug, I know, but I still think these numbers are still interesting to check out once in a while. When I first watched it, I really enjoyed the movie. It's just a very solid underdog story. It's kind of like Top Gun Maverick, but for gamers. A lot of the writing in the movie was really corny and some scenes were just straight up ads for the video game. But beneath all the bullshit, this movie has some charm to it and it was really enjoyable. So if the movie is good, why were the critic reviews so bad? Well, it doesn't really have anything to do with the quality of the movie. The reason why the score was at 54% was because of a very specific scene. If you remember in the movie, the liftoff crash that happened in Nürburgring, where Jan's crash killed a spectator, that happened in real life. They recreated the exact crash where someone actually died. But the problem isn't that they put the crash in the movie. In fact, I think they recreated it pretty well and they didn't make light of the situation at all. You can see how devastating that crash was for everyone involved. But the problem is that the real life crash happened 2 years after when the movie is supposed to take place. They modernized the tech in the movie to have like modern phones, and Jan even plays on a PS5, but the real life story took place in 2013 and the real life crash took place in 2015. They shifted the timeline of the story in order to use the crash as if it was the motivating factor or setback that pushed Jan and his story to become a professional driver. But it's just not how it happened. David Harbour's character doesn't even exist in real life. So how can they call this a true story? Now, this is where it gets complicated, because we've seen this time and time again where people use tragedies like this to turn it into entertainment. But is there a right way to do it? Or should we avoid doing it at all cost? I remember the same kind of problem happened with the Jeffrey Dahmer Netflix show. I think the fact that the families of the victims were either not even aware that they were making the show or straight up ignored when they said they shouldn't make it is not okay, like at all. Some biopics are not as tasteless though. We even have a very good example of this in Oppenheimer. We don't see the bombs that they dropped in Japan because this is Robert Oppenheimer's story. We see these events through his perspective and his experience. If Nolan were to recreate the Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosions, I think it would have been extremely hard to do it the right way, because you don't want it to feel like it was just shown for shock value, but you also don't want it to shy away from how bad it really was. So in Oppenheimer's case, I really think they made the right call by not showing the explosions at all. There's even a scene where he can't get himself to look at the aftermath of his own creation. That is how you approach real-life tragedy in a movie. You have to tell the story how it really was without using the tragedy as shock value. Now, one thing that is important to mention is that Jan Mardenborough was actually the one that pushed the inclusion of this crash in the movie. In an article, I saw this quotation that I think is really important for me to mention. In an interview with the Sunday Times, the real-life Mardenborough addressed the crash's inclusion, saying that leaving it out would have been, quote, a disservice to the audience. I made sure all of us that were with the production, the producers, Jason, the scriptwriter, that was how it went down. He says, quote, because it needed to be correct, because somebody lost their life in this accident, and the movie does a great job of that. It shows as well the deep, dark moments of my life when I was in the hospital by myself. You know, the mental aspect to such an event, and in life as well. What can happen, how you can get out of that, and how can you rebound and achieve something, achieve greatness off the back of that, and so it had to be in there. Now, if he was the one to decide whether they changed the timeline or not, I don't know. But he was co-producer of the movie and he even stunt doubled himself, so he was very involved with the movie. He was even part of the press tour. So if he really wanted that crash to be in the movie and gave permission, doesn't make it okay. I don't know. This is such a complicated problem and situation, but in my opinion, I would at least ask the family of the crash victim for their permission and even give them compensation with the budget of the movie. even then, I don't know if that would make things right and make it okay to change the timeline like they did. Now, with all of that being said, according to the audience score, and most people I talked to that watched the movie, they either didn't know about this timeline change or they don't care at all, which sucks, but you know, it is what it is. If people don't care about the exploitation of tragedies in movies, then these studios are just gonna keep doing it. And there isn't a damn thing you and I can do. That's a pretty depressing way to end this video, but anyway, if you're tired of all these movies recently being remakes and reboots and sequels after sequels, you should check out my review on The Creator, where I explain why it could really change the industry as a whole and how studios should approach filmmaking. Anyway, see you.